Testing, testing. 1, 2, 3.
Hi there, everybody. Oop. Okay, maybe I should just leave. All right. Hi, everyone. Just wanted to let everyone know that we have quorum for tonight's meeting. So we'll just start with roll call, and then we'll get the meeting started just thereafter. So Councillor Kassar? No? Councillor Cameron Kirch, hi there. Gotcha.
Hi, I'm here.
You said Alex Wilson's not making it today, right? Ian said that, I think?
Yeah, he shared his regrets with me.
Okay. Ian, I heard your voice, so you're here. Gabby's here. Biode? Do I see him? Nope. Okay. Jordan? Nope. Okay. Juliana, I saw your face. Hi, Juliana. Jeff is here. Sue?
Present.
Thanks. Jessie's not here. Lucia? There she is. I see her. Aditya? Okay. Zach? Oh, hi, Zach. You're here. Frank? Hi, Frank. You're here. I saw. Yep. Tristan?
Here.
Thanks. Shelley? Thanks.
Here.
I see you. Thank you. Mary Ellen? I don't think so. Miles isn't able to make it. Eladia? No. Matthew is not here. No. And Mary Lou's? No. Oh, I do see Mary Lou's here.
I'm here.
Thanks. Great. So I think we can call the meeting to order. We have quorum. And then I will just start with, I just wonder if I can have a reminder, which myself included, if anybody in the room can turn off their phone for audio, so just so we don't have interruptions. Okay. Thank you. All right. And then also I'm going to do the land acknowledgements. The city of Hamilton is situated upon the traditional territories of the Erie, Neutral, Huron, Wendat, Haudenosaunee, and Mississaugas. This land is covered by the Dish with One Spoon Wampum Belt Covenant, which was the agreement between the Haudenosaunee and the Anishinaabe to share and care for the resources around the Great Lakes. We further acknowledge that this land is covered by the Between the Lakes purchase of 1792 between the Crown and the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation. Today, the city of Hamilton is home to many Indigenous people from across Turtle Island, and we recognize that we must do more to learn about the rich history of this land so we can better understand our role as residents, neighbors, partners, and caretakers. One of the first items we just need to do is approval of the agenda. And if I can have a mover for, or at first to see if there's any changes that anybody wants to make to the agenda. Okay, so no changes to the agenda. If I can just have someone who can move the agenda. Sue? And seconded? All right, perfect. It was Sue Ellen, I think it was, sorry. I think it was Shelley who, Shelley was you who did, yeah, Shelley did, yeah. Okay, if I can just identify if any is opposed to the motion of approving the agenda. No? Okay, and all in favor? All right, excellent, thank you. The motion's carried. So just if there's any declarations of interest that anyone has, just with regards to if there's any item on the agenda where there is a potential perceived or real conflict of interest between any items, just to note that as part of the agenda. All right, I see none, therefore we will carry on. So the next step is to adopt the minutes or review the minutes of the May 27th meeting and see if there's any changes that anyone has to those meeting minutes. I don't see any changes to the minutes, in which case, can I get a mover for approval of the minutes?
I can approve the minute.
Ian, I've got Ian moved and seconded by Frank. All right, and that, anyone opposed to approving the minutes of the May 27th meeting? Don't see any objections. All in favor? Okay, and that is carried. All right. So now we have a lot of presentations on the agenda for today, so we're going to get right into that. We have the first presentation is from the Community Liaison Group Transition, just an update on the Community Liaison transition process. And I think it's Lauren, right? You're going to be sharing it and the presentation?
So through the chair, Beatrice will have the presentation. I see that she's already had it loaded up, and it'll be myself and Sunil who are going to be presenting, Sunil Angrish. And so Sunil's going to get us started, so I'll let him introduce himself, and then I'll go ahead and take my part. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Through the chair, my name is Sunil Angrish. I'm a I'm accompanied by my colleague. I'll start over. I'm a little nervous and caffeinated, so that goes well together. My name is Sunil Angrish. I'm a project manager with Community Inclusion and Equity here at the City of Hamilton. I'm accompanied by my colleague Lauren Vrates, Senior Project Manager for Community Engagement. And we're here to talk about the transition from volunteer advisory committees to community liaison groups. Next slide, please. So we begin with a desire for change. Through this process, as many of you are familiar with, as we've seen from your previous meeting, you had some conversations about this. We've seen that there is a large desire for changes to take place within volunteer advisory committees, and that's really what has prompted this transition to CLGs, or community liaison groups. Some of that includes meaningful engagement, increased transparency, role clarity, improved work culture, structural changes, and enhanced training and development. We have found through our consultations that there are many barriers and bureaucracies that make things complicated for individuals. In terms of transparency, how decisions are made, how volunteers are selected to be on committees has been a question. The roles of volunteers and staff and being more clear about what those are and how those work together better have all been things that have been brought up through our engagement process. Now, I'll add that all these changes are what emerged from our engagement, but that being said, they may not be applicable to all volunteer advisory committees. Maybe you're really content with some elements of your committee and you want to retain those, and that's okay. Next slide, please. So a little bit about the report. So it began with council direction in 2024 in November to do a review of volunteer advisory committees. The engagement process reflects the experiences from volunteer advisory committee members. So there were 66 participants, 2 focus groups, 10 interviews, and a number of other engagement methods that were used to collect information. One of the key elements of this transition is to reduce barriers for meaningful participation. So as I outlined on the previous slide, finding opportunities to make these groups more accessible, make them friendlier, make them easier for people to become part of is a big goal of the CLGs. And I'll add the benefits are obviously ensuring that these groups are resident-led with support from city staff. The roles and responsibilities are established by CLG members. So this is part of what we're here to talk about now, which is the second stage of the engagement process, which is really having those conversations about what do you want your committee to look like and how can it evolve and change to better reflect the community needs and interests. And I'll just add that as part of the recommendation, a report back will be coming regarding this group to GIC as part of this process. Next slide, please. So we know the why. Meaningful engagement, transparency, reduce barriers to participation, role clarity, training, and improve culture of support are really important. What we want to do is ask the question, what do we have to do? Some of this is reviewing options for resident-led staff-facilitated CLG groups. Not all CLG groups will have the same models or processes. Some may look very different. Some may resemble very closely to what a volunteer advisory committee already looks like. Some may be radically different, and that's okay. We're leaving room for these changes to happen. We're looking for community engagement for each of the CLGs or VACs as they are now to engage with your membership and external individuals and organizations as well to really gauge that input in terms of what do you want this to look like? How does it evolve? And how can we be more inclusive and welcoming to others? In about a year, there'll be a report back from departments to councils of committee. And so, for example, yours would be in GIC. And following approval from council, that will be when the implementation and recruitment will begin of these new CLGs, if that is the direction that the CLGs or the VACs, lots of acronyms, elect to go into. Next slide, please. I'm going to turn things over to Lauren for this part.
Okay, so thanks, Sunil, and wonderful discussion that your team had last meeting on May 27th. I think Beatrice did a really wonderful job of explaining what we've been talking about as staff, internal staff, with the leads of each of these community liaison or volunteer advisory committees currently. This is my 2 points that I took away from the discussion that I think were probably most prevalent to me when I was listening to what the feedback was from this group in terms of key themes that you were interested in. So the first of all was clarity on how you might go about doing community engagement, right? So how you would go about utilizing existing relationships that you might have in community with community partners, how you might do a broader engagement through the public, through some supports that you might have internally here at the city, and then the methods that you might choose, right? And then number 2 was more a discussion about the structure. I think there are a lot of components that I understood from that discussion that really fit into there, and so I have a slide on that as well. But it was really kind of getting into how are the different roles going to be defined by each of the members, by the staff, how are you going to ensure the transparency and accountability for this committee when it comes to how it's implemented, and then also the flexibility, right? So if you can think of all the what Sunil had on the slide with those different things about what we heard through the SPRC report back when that was done with the existing members of volunteer advisory committees, there was a desire for that flexibility to be incorporated. So how do you increase transparency but also have accountability and flexibility? It's a bit of a balancing act, right? And then some discussion about the structure, overall structure of what a community liaison group could look like for CCAC. Next slide, please. So hopefully that was, I think that was a good encapsulation. Hopefully we can bring up anything else that came up, but I just want to touch on the community engagement part first. And so we took a 2-phased approach with community engagement for this particular transition for volunteer advisory committees. We're actually doing more of a broad look at volunteering in general with the city, right? So volunteering recruitment is a little bit decentralized at the city. I want to say a little bit, but it is. Each department does a volunteer recruitment differently for different groups that they're trying to have engaged with the programs that they offer. Volunteer advisory committees, very much similar to that, although it was handled by clerks, right, through council. And so we were asking through this broad campaign, Volunteers Make Waves, which is on Engage Hamilton right now. I know Beatrice mentioned this at her initial presentation, but I would encourage you to go on there and take the 2-question survey, shortest survey of your life. And we're really just trying to find out what motivates people to volunteer, and then what support you might want or need to be able to continue volunteering, or how you might want to be recognized for your efforts. So We've had a lot of success actually at in-person engagements, and we've had some just broad themes coming up. You know, for motivation, a lot of times it's just people who really want to give back to community, or it's something that they were involved in through their work in the past that they want to keep working on through their involvement. They have some knowledge base in it. They want to keep contributing to community. Some folks want their volunteer hours, like teenagers in high school, right? So, and then there's other folks who have limited options for job training that might be accessible to them, and this might be, volunteering might be a good portal for them to build some experience on their resume. And then in terms of supports and recognitions, I think some of the things that came up at your last meeting were also echoed in some of the engagement that we've already heard. Transportation, having options for being able to compensate people for coming to meetings or whatever with a transit fare, with parking availability, changing, maybe tailoring the times of those meetings or locations of them so those things might be a bit easier. Yeah, and I think so. I think some of the things that came up at the last meeting were very much similar to what some themes that we've heard in our engagement more broadly as well. So I think we're on the right track. Next slide, please. And so part two is more of where your volunteer advisory committee and Beatrice and the OCCI team would be involved. And so this is where we're looking at community engagement and outreach to really define what a community liaison group, what the needs are for that if it were to transition away from a volunteer advisory committee, right? So it's going to be a process of engagement that will be supported by your staff liaison, so Beatrice and the OCCI team, but with the support of our engagement team at the city manager's office as well. So we're going to be able to provide some, to help scoping some of these with our staff liaisons. We also, this is a little bit of a preemptive discussion because we have a community of practice of all the staff liaisons that are helping with this transition. And the next session that we have is on Tuesday next week, and we're actually talking about the community engagement piece. So we're a little ahead of the curve here, but really most important here is to really be clear about how you're scoping your engagement. You need to define your goal. And this is going to be different for each committee, right? So each committee is going to know where their sticking points might be. You might know how flexibility could be improved just from your experience, and you might have some goals for what you want to hear, or what you want to know from the public, right? And then you need to decide then who you're going to talk to. Who your audience is, and you need to make sure it's clear how that discussion will inform a decision with those who are involved, right? And so being clear about, we call it the spectrum of engagement. You know, where do you fall in terms of the spectrum of engagement? That's a city term, it's, you know, public engagement term, but we have 3 levels at the city. They're most predominant. We have consult, involve, and collaborate. So there's different methods that you might choose that are aligned based on what your goal is, right? So if you might have a more of a collaborative approach, that might be something that might be more of a discussion based, a focus group, things like that. If you are, if you're taking that kind of level of engagement. Again, we'll talk to Beatrice more about this next week to help her lead you and your team through it. And then the Engage Hamilton platform, we do plan to update that platform so that we can provide a portal for the different volunteer advisory committees to provide an opportunity to have some online engagement through that portal, or if it's just a link to, if you don't plan to do online engagement through Engage Hamilton, that's fine. You may want to just have what we see is kind of like a list of all the different committees and the different groups that are transitioning, and then the different engagement events or opportunities that will be available to people. So that's kind of a really broad level of phase 2. And Beatrice, could you go to the second to last slide here? And at our last community of practice meeting that Beatrice was at, Clerk Trenham was able to provide the different structures that go into a terms of reference for one of the community liaison groups. And so we have these different components here. You know, a preamble is kind of like your big why statement. Your mandate and purpose is how you're going to execute that in a really high level way. And then the nitty gritty, the components after that are really like your what, like what are you doing? What is the service? What is the, and how, and then your execution of that. So who's going to become, how is your committee going to be composed? Who's takes on which roles and which responsibilities. That you may want to have, in the case of our Veterans Committee, they wanted to have more clearly defined roles for people in their discussions, and that is fine. It really depends on the community liaison group and how you want to be able to define your roles. You need an annual work plan as well. You need to have something that guides your work over the course of your term or over the course of your year, so that you can, when you're reporting into council, there'll be a clear plan about what you're executing. Meeting schedule, how you're going to run working groups, all those procedural components, I think, would be, a component of that. And then you have your, I know this was one thing this group was really paying attention to, how do you report back into council? There is a minimum expectation of a 1-year reporting back into council for each of these groups, but you can choose to have more opportunity to do that should you want to. And we are investigating with the clerk's office whether there is an opportunity to have different avenues for community liaison groups to provide almost like a delegation, but on a standing committee item, a standing item kind of on the agendas component. And yeah, so we're investigating these different ways of doing this. And I know that will differ for each of the groups and how they want to report in. But yeah, that's kind of a high level of the structure. And I think that wraps up my slides because I wanted to leave time for discussion. So this is my contact information and Sunil's. And I'm sure there are questions, and we might not have all the answers, but we'll try our best for today. And anything that we don't have answers on today, we will we'll connect through Beatrice. Thank you.
Thanks, Sunil. Thanks, Lauren. I see Ian's hand up, and if anybody else has any other questions, if you can just raise your hand on screen. And all right, perfect. So Ian, take it away, and then I have Jeff.
Yeah, thanks, Gabby, and thank you to you both for the presentation. I think I'll kind of do a bit of a comment, and if there's an answer to the question I'm asking with my comment, then I appreciate it. But I also appreciate that we're still in the process of working out what the actual process is of this reworking of the community groups. And so I think my core concern, and I expressed this last time during the last meeting, and Lauren, thank you for referencing that discussion. For myself, and I think for a lot of folks I've talked to who have sat on this committee with me or on other committees, there was a sense of legitimacy with regards to being appointed by council. And I think that legitimacy is not so much even based in that they're assigned to this group, but I think there is an implicit understanding that we elect our council through democratic means, and those councillors represent the will of the voters. And then the will of the voters through representation will result in who sits on these committees. With the process of figuring out who the components of these working groups are going to be, I think my major concern right now is setting up a system in which how members are allocated to these working groups is left in a very undemocratic state that can't be changed in the future. So maybe one question that's a bit broader is is there a plan for this reworking to revisit how things are going? Is there a planned date where a report will go back to council and there will be a discussion about the decisions that were made on how to make these changes? And has there been more consideration given to, we're saying it's staff facilitated, citizen led, and we can all certainly weigh in on how we would like, citizens to be appointed in the future to whatever form this committee takes in the future. But I have a real concern from a democratic decision-making process of how future members of whatever this working group looks like will be assigned. So I don't know if there's any, further details on that, or if there's a plan to revisit how these decisions are being made. And I will just say, I think there is a real risk in determining 14 different membership structures and 14 different ways of recruiting members to these groups. Yeah, I'll leave it there, and I'm happy to take any answers that you may have, and I'll definitely be following up offline as well.
I think it would be on the speakers. Lauren or Sunil, do you have any kind of insights yet on terms of what's the recruitment process going to be and whether it's going to be the same recruitment process for all of the committees, or if there's flexibility, or like, I was just wondering if there's any kind of clarity on how the recruitment process will take place across the community liaison committees, and if council will be deciding anything with regards to who gets appointed to the committees.
So through the chair, quick answer is no, because it will be a determination through that terms of reference that you would work on that likely after you do your engagement, right? I think maybe you have a sense of how some of those areas might be filled out, but that recruitment component, how your membership will be assigned, you may want to choose something like having organizational representatives from certain groups. You may want to choose to have a certain representation from different areas of the city or different groups that might be valuable to have feedback from around this table that aren't currently here. So it really is, I'll throw it back to like the veterans example, because they're a little further along. Their work plan is very scoped in terms of the services that they provide. So they were able to move through this process a little bit quicker. But in terms of their recruitment, they like to have people from they like to have representation from different sectors of the armed forces, and to be able to provide feedback on their commemorative events and things like that. So they really have a very clear recruitment of who they look for on that committee. There may want to be some consideration about that as well. And when it comes to decisions by council, the decision that council will be making for this community liaison group is whether or not to there would be a report that goes with the recommendation for however this might transition. That report would be brought forward by Beatrice and other staff leads for each of the advisory committees. And it would be this council who will be either approving, modifying with typical recommendations process, recommendation report, right? So that would be the approvals process there. In terms of appointment by council, I think we're moving away from that through the community liaison groups to open it up for different methods of having people join. We had a presentation at our last community liaison group staff liaison meeting. Sorry, I'm getting all my words mixed up. But like, we had the Hammond Youth and the Youth Advisory Committee representation. They were formerly a steering committee, volunteer advisory committee. They've transitioned to more of a community liaison group model, and they saw their membership just really expand, really be more people taking on a little bit more leadership roles. There's some leadership flexibility there. They have rotating chairs. They have more flexibility in terms of how the group might function. And they've seen it to be a really positive for that particular group, especially youth. You know, they can't commit to a 4-year term. They're moving on in 4 years, usually from wherever they're starting. So it's an opportunity for them. It's also something that this group might want to think about in terms of terms as well, right? So what happens when you have people who can no longer make it? How does that work? And how do we want to inform recruitment after that? So short answer is no. There's still some things to be decided, but a lot of those things also would be decided by you and your discussions with your staff liaison and informed by your community engagement.
Thank you.
I just have a quick follow-up on that. Has the Veterans Committee decided or issued a recommendation of, like, I understand the terms of reference, like, it absolutely makes sense to me, but ultimately, at the end of the day, council was filling the members according to the terms of reference. I guess my question is who is the person appointing these members as laid out in the terms of reference, and have the other committees made a recommendation there? Just because I'll stress, we're moving away from elected representatives appointing these people to, I don't know, like, that hasn't been answered yet.
And through the chair, I think it's because there's no clear determination on how that would function for each group. I'm just quickly trying to pull up a housing I believe there is a group under the Housing Secretariat's office that is another example. They do a recruitment on an annual basis through the Housing Secretariat's office. And so there are other, I will say that there are other groups that operate like community liaison groups already in existence at the city. But so it's not entirely uncommon to have it happen, but I do understand your concern with like making sure that there's like through the recruitment process that is clear. And it's something we'll be working with Beatrice on. So again, I don't have all the answers on this right now, and I don't think there's no decision that has to be made at this moment about how you're going to proceed with this. But being open to flexibility, being open to exploring this option, I think is what we've been directed to do, and so this is the work plan that we're carrying out.
Hey, thanks for the presentation. I think there's a few assumptions here. One being that there seems to be a bunch of expectations for the existing committee members to somehow lead the process for something that feels like a fait accompli that personally I don't agree with, and I don't feel very inclined to be involved in crafting a process for something that is supposed to be more inclusive and include community, but somehow be defined by the existing members, but also have a bunch of structure around it that's being presented to us in terms of, oh, you got to have a terms of reference, you got to have this, you got to have that. And it's also being sold as being more sold, and I'm not using it pejoratively, but it's being packaged and presented to us as this is going to be more accountable and more transparent. Like, we're currently being live streamed right now, and we're appointed by council. So I don't get how that works. And great for a youth group, that makes sense that there would be more flux, but I don't see why flux couldn't be accommodated in the current structure. Like, people have dropped off this group, and we can have new people join. So I'm personally not really inclined to participate in something that I don't buy into, and am being asked as a volunteer with no additional supports to somehow do an engagement process as well and do these other things for something that seems a little bit ill-defined and nebulous. And I just, at the end of the day, I don't see it being a valuable thing for me to participate in at this point. And I'm seeing that there's okay, and to sort of Ian's point, I guess there's a concern that is ultimately at the end of the day, staff's going to be signing off on committee representation as opposed to council. And then these reports are like, there could be some hand picking, or there could be some maybe encouragement or recommendation of certain folks over others. And yeah, that can happen with elected representatives as well, but at least they're elected representatives, right? If staff is somehow involved in the process of leading how this is going to work and then helping to select the representatives, that would give me some pause, because I think there needs to be some sort of independence there. And I don't really see how this group with this membership is going to help evolve into this model that you folks foresee us evolving into, or maybe we're getting to come up with this model and somehow bring in other community. Like, I guess, sorry, this is a bit rambly, but to get to the final point, like, if you want us to invest our capital with the communities that we're members of, with the organizations that we're representing, I think there needs to be more work on buy-in before presenting a lot of stuff that looks like fait accompli to us and saying, okay, you might have liked the way things work. That's not going to be the way anymore. Things are going to be different. You're going to help us make things different. And we need it by such and such a time, but it's got to kind of also look like this. And we need it to be more inclusive, but how it's going to be that way is, you guys can figure it out with X resources and, which are undefined, and, you'll go out to community and talk to them, and it'll be great. Trust us. So I'm sorry to sound frustrated by this, but I am frustrated just at the way this is going, and I don't really feel that the contributions of the committee has made are valued. Yeah, it's frustrating. Sorry.
next I have Councillor Croach. Take it away.
Thanks. Just want to add a couple thoughts here that when this came before council, there was a question asked directly to the city clerk about whether or not council could be involved in the selection process, and a bunch of other things. And so I just want to say that like those things were all left on the table, and the city clerk said, yeah, we're going to figure this out. Ultimately, the line people are trying to balance is between having this become a local board type of situation where it's so formal that it prevents people from wanting to participate while still having it be open and active. So I do actually think it's important for everyone here to voice their opinions through whatever survey mechanism that exists. And when this does come back to council, it'll be coming back in a way that allows for some interaction from councillors too. So they're going to want to know what your thoughts are and so on. So I'm just putting that out there that I understand it may feel like a fait accompli to a certain extent, but the way that there were two different iterations of this report. The very first report that came forward, I think, was a little bit more like this is exactly how it's going to happen. And then councillor said, we're looking for some more information here. We're looking to ways to make this more democratic. I'm looking for ways to make sure this isn't just some random committee of staff that's just shelved somewhere, right? So that was a big point by many councillors. And the report was then rewritten slightly to accommodate that, to make sure that it was focused on being staff supported and citizen led. And, you know, obviously we also don't want to create a model that's different for every single community liaison group, right? Where it becomes a bespoke situation where there's no way to really have an understanding of what these bodies are and how they operate. So that's my understanding based on what I was told at council, what I voted on, the things changes I tried to make. So I just want to put that out there. Like, I get it. I think that it makes sense to feel this way because advisory committees in general have been very weird, and their weirdness makes all of us feel uncomfortable about them. That's why one of the reasons they're going away, and that we're trying to start something new that we hope is sustainable, ethical, democratic, open, public, right? And so on. So that's the point, is that there were serious issues with advisory committees in the way they are, including this one. And I'm sure you've all experienced it to some extent in terms of the fact that we don't have city clerk support here. We don't have all kinds of other things. We're required to do all these things, right? Formally, but we don't have all the support that we need to do them. So we have to address those issues because those issues are really important. And so I'm hopeful that we'll get there. And I know that many councillors on the committee are very concerned about these things and are going to advocate to make sure that this turns out in a way that benefits everybody, myself included.
Thanks. And then I have Lucia, and I think we'll make that the last question on this. Oh, sorry, Ellen then as well. Okay, and then we'll make that the last one on this one and move on to the next agenda item. Take it away, Lucia.
Practical question is around the transition. Just thinking of some of the things that this committee has worked on. Sometimes it takes a long time, and I think potentially something that might be an impediment to us feeling like we want to start a new project right now is just not knowing what the transition is going to be like. If we were to start working on something like, for example, the work that we did around green building standards took a while, what would the transition process look like if it runs into next year?
I don't know if you have any insights for Lucia there.
So that would be looking at March 2026 is when these reports would need to be from each of the different, representing each of the different volunteer advisory committees would need to go back to the committee that they generally would have reported into, this one being GIC. And then after that point, you can implement your new recruitment component. You may want to, part of that might be existing advisory committee members are already grandfathered in, however you want to, consider it. But there may be that might be an opportunity to bring. I don't know if it necessarily means you have to stop planning for the work that you want to do, because I don't think. I think it can continue if that would continue to be part of your mandate. It might just be that you might have at that time, you might have different folks who would be joining you to help implement that. So no clear, again, I'm sorry that this might not be that we have all the clear answers at this point, but I don't think that you should necessarily stop your long-term plans for what you're looking to implement. But you could also then consider, with more support, more membership, if you wanted to expand it, you could look at additional projects in the future, and what those might be, right? So it's an opportunity, I think, and hopefully one that you guys are willing to work with us on. I just want to also, just to the comment about this being a fait accompli, like, and I will say that it really isn't, because there, like Councillor Crutch was saying, that there was some wording that was adjusted in the report that came back in early 2025, and the OCCI staff, they have to prepare a report on this. They have a direction through through this report to implement this work plan. So it is something that they have to execute, and I hope that there would be support around the table here from the membership here to really support the staff that then support you to get to do this transition. And again, our community engagement team, our public engagement team are a resource as part of this in terms of engagement, outreach methods, helping to plan that, helping to scope that. We're there as a resource, so you can be sure to reach out to us.
Mary Ellen.
My question, it's something I haven't quite understood throughout this entire process, and I believe I'm one of the 66 members of other committees that responded. Is that what you were referring to when you said 66? I went through this process. And one of the things I talked about and emphasized was how in my previous committee life, one of the things that had been a major disappointment was the non-involvement of the councillor assigned to the committee. And one of the things I have enjoyed most about this committee is the active participation of the councillors, both in terms of perhaps hearing us and listening to what we're saying, but also assisting and clarifying, as we just heard, helping us understand why things are the way they are, or where we could perhaps best direct the things that we're interested in. I've never quite understood what the rationale is, as I believe we will no longer have councillor participation. Is that correct? Do I have that? And it's strictly a dialogue with staff in terms of who we engage with. So can someone clarify that no more councillor participation, and why that decision was made would be helpful?
Or even if there is flexibility for the report coming from the OCCI to General Issues Committee, like if the formats are not formalized, is there a possibility of having still council representation in the committee moving forward if it's presented?
Okay, so through the chair, thank you for the question. So you'd need to formalize if you wanted to have council involvement in your terms of reference. The one thing I will say though is, like, is this committee the only avenue that you have to interact with council? Could there be other ways that you could seek involvement of council, or could you be involved in other ways, either, connecting with the ward councillors and the engagement that they have with residents, through their newsletters, through inviting them to meetings, maybe not as a voting member, but as a member to, and having that open invitation. I think it's just worth considering if there's other options, instead of them only being like members of the committee, are there other options for engagement and consistent communication with councillors that might be explored through this? So that's just another thought that I've had.
Oh, take it away, councillor.
Yeah, thanks for that, Lauren. Again, that question was asked at council, that specific and direct question. And the city clerk responded by saying the following two things. One, councillors can still participate in these meetings. And two, depending on the outcome of these discussions, right? And there's all these various work plans from different committees that have to be submitted, and there's all this stuff going to be put into a report. It's going to come back to council. So, there can still be a process for there to be members selected to be part of this. Right now, it's a bit up in the air. Are we voting members of these committees? The answer from my perspective is no. Councilors are here as appointees and advisors, but we're not here to vote. And so that doesn't have to change necessarily. It might though mean something more flexible. Who knows? Could be like, oh, well, there's several councilors who are interested in participating with the Veterans Committee, right? Right now we have it where only one councilor is involved in that situation. Maybe now there's like 6 councilors and they invite different people to come at different times. I don't know. It just might look a little bit different, but there's nothing stopping from councilors. So just to your point, Mary Ellen, no, it's not going to mean that councilors are not participating anymore. And again, myself and 2 other councilors asked that question during this and we're told that that's not the case. So I just want to let you know it's not a fait accompli there either.
All right. We'll wrap up that item on the agenda. And the next item on the agenda is to have a presentation from the City of Hamilton staff. Scott, I think he's here. Hi, Scott.
Hello?
Hi, we can hear you.
Great. I'm just sharing my screen now.
Perfect. We see your slides, just needs to put it in slideshow format. Yeah, perfect. Take it away. Thank you very much, Scott.
Great. Thank you. Good evening, committee members. My name is Scott Turnbull. I'm a planner within the Sustainable Community section of the Planning Division. I'm here today to provide an update on the City of Hamilton's work related to energy storage systems. Also joined on the call with me today is Charlie Toman.
Sorry, Scott, we haven't been able to find the volume in this room to turn the audio up. I was wondering, is it possible just for you to speak a bit louder?
Sorry about that. I'll start again. Is this better?
Yeah. Take it away.
Great. So good evening, committee members. My name is Scott Turnbull. I'm a planner within the Sustainable Community section of the Planning Division. I'm here today to provide an update on the City of Hamilton's work related to energy storage systems. Also joined on the call with me today is Charlie Toman, Program Lead, Policy Planning and Municipal Comprehensive Review. So to provide some context for this work, it's really in response to a series of procurements launched by the province through the Independent Electricity System Operator, or ISO. The ISO is a not-for-profit corporate entity which is under the jurisdiction of the Ontario Minister of Energy, and they deliver services across the electricity sector, including managing the flow of power and planning for future energy needs. The ISO has forecasted that the province will be entering a period of increased electricity demand due to a variety of factors, including increased electrification and retirement of existing facilities. To address this increased demand, the ISO is seeking additional energy storage capacity through a series of cadenced procurements. The first procurement was launched in spring of 2023 and concluded in May 2024, with the ISO acquiring over 2,000 megawatts of new storage capacity. The ISO announced a second procurement that is anticipated to launch by the end of June. This procurement will be moving to a windowed approach for submissions, allowing proponents to bid into the procurement annually over the next 4 years. So over the course of those 4 years, the ISO will be targeting a total acquisition of 1,600 megawatts for storage resources. As part of the ISO's procurement process, proponents are required to demonstrate municipal support for their bid by receiving a municipal support resolution from the local municipality. A municipal support resolution is made by or on behalf of a municipality and is intended to only be a demonstration of support for the purposes of the procurement. The municipal support resolution does not exempt energy storage projects from applicable environmental or land use approvals, including official plan amendment, zoning bylaw amendment, or site plan approval applications. If a project receives a municipal support resolution but does not meet provincial or municipal laws and regulations, the project would not be permitted to move forward. However, it is important to note that the standard appeal rights for the Future Planning Act applications would continue to apply. So the City of Hamilton received 3 requests for municipal support resolutions back in December 2023 from energy storage proponents. Municipal support resolutions were not issued at that time, but council directed staff to report back to planning committee with recommended criteria for council to consider for future projects seeking a municipal support resolution. So this work being completed is in response to that motion. So I know we have a couple of other presentations today, including another from Energy Storage Canada. So I'll try to keep these next slides brief. Essentially, energy storage systems are facilities that draw energy from the grid when demand is low. They store that energy and then discharge it back into the grid when demand is high and the energy is needed most. There are a variety of energy storage system types, but one of the most recent and prevalent technologies is battery energy storage systems, or BESS for short, which the diagram on the slide represents. Battery energy storage systems generally consist of lithium batteries, large containers to house them, and transmission infrastructure. The facilities may include additional structures for operation or maintenance purposes, but often, as shown in the diagram, there are no other structures associated with these facilities. The ISO identifies some of the benefits of energy storage as improving the grid reliability by storing surplus energy until it's needed, supporting renewable energy generation projects such as wind and solar by smoothing out fluctuations in their power output caused by unpredictable weather patterns, and providing backup power to communities, homes, and businesses during emergencies. Some land use considerations for these facilities, in particular battery energy storage, can include noise impacts generated from the transmission equipment on site, potential impacts to natural heritage features and agricultural lands through the siting of these facilities, thermal runaway, which refers to the fire risk that's inherent to this battery technology, and facility life cycle. This refers to how the facility will be decommissioned at the end of its life cycle or the end of the contract with the ISO. Energy storage systems can also vary by use and ownership. This infographic is based on a chart prepared by the City of Ottawa, which helpfully shows the various uses of an energy storage system. Energy storage systems can be a principal use, meaning that the function of the system is to simply connect to the grid and store and discharge energy directly. Alternatively, an energy storage system can function as an accessory use where the system supports and is subordinate to another use on the property, such as a renewable energy facility, a commercial use, or a residential use. As previously mentioned, staff have been directed to report back to Planning Committee regarding potential criteria to evaluate energy storage facilities and the associated requests for municipal support. Through our review, staff have looked at energy storage systems through two separate but related lenses. The first is related to the municipal support resolution request process. Currently, there is no formal process in place for council to receive and issue municipal support resolution requests. Staff are looking at what kind of process may need to be established to help with a timely review and consideration of these requests. Staff are also looking at what kind of information may need to be provided by a proponent when submitting a request in order to facilitate council's consideration. Through this review, staff are also looking at potential community engagement requirements. When a municipal support resolution is issued, it states that community engagement has or will occur to the satisfaction of the municipality. As such, staff are reviewing potential options to satisfy that statement. Lastly, through our review, staff note that some municipality and project proponents have entered into what are referred to as community benefit agreements. These agreements formally establish any community benefit commitments that a proponent may put forward to a municipality through the municipal support resolution process. The second part of our review is looking at the city's official plan and zoning bylaw to ensure that it provides a strong policy framework to support and appropriately site energy storage facilities. As referenced previously, energy storage is an emerging and quickly evolving field, And as such, staff are reviewing our land use documents to identify any updates to definitions, submission requirements, land use permissions, and performance standards for energy storage facilities. As staff have gone through this review process, we've sought feedback from external agencies, including conservation authorities and utilities, city departments, including the Office of Climate Change Initiatives and the Fire Department, and industry as well, primarily seeking feedback from the proponents who previously made requests to the city for municipal support resolutions. So in terms of next steps for this work, staff are currently in the report development process and are anticipating taking the report to the July 29th Planning Committee. Staff welcome feedback from the Climate Change Advisory Committee, either on the information provided today or once the report is available publicly. We welcome any comments from the committee. We also wanted to note for the committee that the ISO has launched a separate procurement for energy generation facilities. This procurement will also be a windowed procurement over the next 4 years and will include renewable energy generation facilities such as solar farms and wind turbines. Staff will need to conduct a similar review for these facilities and will consult with the Climate Change Advisory Committee through that work. That concludes our update for today. Happy to answer any questions from the committee, or if any questions come to mind after the committee, our contact information is here.
Thanks, Scott. I see Frank's hand up. So if anyone has any questions for just the folks online, if you can just raise your hand so that we can see that. And then in the room, if there's anyone who has questions, just raise your hand. Take it away, Frank.
I couldn't find the slides, this package of slides. I could for the other presentations that are going to follow, but that's just something that it could be sent to me or sent to the committee. I don't see the package. But
yeah,
anyways,
they weren't up on the agenda, so
no. So that's number one. You mentioned there's 3 people that submitted something for battery storage, just battery storage. That's the only submissions, and they were back in 2023, December, or. And what's the outcome of those? Like, are they been approved, or they have to wait for this process?
Through the chair, that is correct. There were 3 proposals for battery energy storage within the city of Hamilton as part of the previous procurement, which the submission deadline was in December 2023. Those proponents ultimately did not proceed with their bid into the ISO, as the municipal support resolutions were not issued at that time.
Okay, so the work you're doing is really, there's no application coming forward right now. And the other question is there any way to review those 3 submissions, of where they were or what they're about? Is that public knowledge, or it's all private?
Through the chair, so the next procurement is set to launch shortly. The ISO has indicated that they anticipate finalizing the RFP documents by the end of this month. So that would start the next procurement, which there will be 4 submission windows over the next 4 years in which somebody would be able to make a bid into the ISO. In regards to the previous proposals, submissions were made to committee regarding those projects. So there's public information in that regard, and staff are happy to circulate that to the committee.
Well, that would be appreciated. That's the only question.
Yeah, I just had hopefully a quick one. I understand, or I think my understanding is that the process in terms of community support for municipal support for battery storage is kind of like a nice to have, whereas if you want to do a wind project, it's a requirement. Is that correct?
But through the chair, not quite. In the first procurement for the energy storage projects, the municipal support resolution was not a requirement. You would receive additional rated criteria points if you included that as part of your bid. However, for this upcoming procurement, it is a requirement by the ISO that a energy storage proponent receive a municipal support resolution.
Next, we have Jordan with a question.
Okay, I was just wondering, so I know in the thing it said, like, you guys seem to say that lithium batteries were like your best bet at the moment. And I know there's like kind of a lot of controversy around that, like with mining and stuff, we know that's very bad for the environment. So I was kind of just wondering, and I know this is something we can like talk circles around, but if there was any like transition plan in place, because like ultimately I imagine lithium batteries are something we're going to have to phase out. And somewhat, I guess, just, yeah, if there were any efforts to find alternatives or what was going on there. Yeah, thank you.
Through the chair, from our understanding, lithium ion batteries are one of the more prevalent batteries that proponents are utilizing for these types of energy storage. You know, some of the folks later on in this agenda in terms of Energy Storage Canada might be able to speak to some of the developments in that technology and alternative battery options, but our sense is that that's a predominant battery type.
Alrighty, thank you.
Any other questions? Oh, Mary Ellen, take it away.
I just had a question on when you discussed zoning and official plan. I was reminded, I saw something on the news recently about a proposal of this nature in the Ottawa area that had become very controversial. And so would the intention be, as you look at the planning policies, to have these things considered more or less an as of right and avoid that sort of repetitive process for every installation of this type? Or are you foreseeing having to put people through planning approvals for each facility?
Through the chair, that's part of the review that staff are undertaking. This is a new and emerging technology. So part of the work that staff have been doing is looking at our official plan and zoning bylaw to see if it has the policy framework to appropriately cite these facilities with the appropriate regulations. Through that work, we've also been speaking with key stakeholders such as our fire department in terms of the requirements that they need for these types of facilities.
All right, any other questions for Scott? No? So we'll move. Thank you very much, Scott. Really appreciate your presentation. Just one question with regards to it. So you mentioned it about going to the July 29th planning committee meeting. When would be the option for when the committee could review? Would it have to wait till the public document is available, or is there a chance to engage with you earlier on to get a little bit of a sense of what is likely to be proposed to the planning committee?
Through the chair, great question. My understanding is it would be once the report is publicly available. I may look to Charlie if I'm mistaken in that assumption.
Yes, thanks, Scott. Can everyone hear me? Okay.
Yep, take it away, Charlie.
Headset. Charlie Toman, Program Lead Policy Planning. So the Scott's correct, where you would have to wait until the staff report has been finalized before you can understand sort of what specific steps staff are recommending. But we have prepared background information for industry, kind of talking about the different options. So if the committee, prior to that report being public, has any input just on, general citing of these or factors that we should be looking at, we can still take in that information and incorporate it into the report if it's in the short term. So I guess there's two chances. There's shortly after this meeting, and then there's also when the staff report becomes publicly available.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Charlie. Thank you, Scott, for your presentations. Really appreciate it. Oh, Frank Kent.
I just,
see your hand now.
to follow up, you were going to send us the slides, right, and the background information. So from that, we could have some questions that we would make prior to that planning meeting. I mean, obviously, you know, the two official plans for the city predate this material, even though it's been around for 2 years or so. So an official plan amendment is going to have to be, anybody that proposes something is going to have to make an official plan amendment, I would think, again, in a site plan, you know, a zoning, rezoning of whatever lands they have, because this is new. It doesn't have a zoning and it doesn't have an official plan status. So those things I see as something that has to happen. Am I correct?
Through the chair, as mentioned, we're looking at it kind of in two separate ways. The first is the municipal support resolution process. So these requests that come into the municipality and how they're considered and what information needs to be provided, which this municipal support resolution request process kind of exists outside of the Planning Act. And then there is the question, as you've noted, of how does the official plan treat these facilities, and the zoning bylaw are updates required, and that's the work that staff's carrying out.
So then just as a kind of follow up on this one, chances are there probably will need to be some sort of, once the information or the recommendations from the planning staff is being shared publicly, there probably would need to be a meeting of the Hamilton Climate Change Advisory Committee to review that, gather input, and speak to a possible deputation or any providing input on that. So that's just something we have to figure out how we handle that. Okay, perfect. Thank you, Scott. Thanks, Charlie. So just as our next presentation, we did have Andrew from Energy Storage Canada who was going to present. The slides that he was going to present on are attached to the agenda, but unfortunately he had to leave, so he couldn't stay for doing his presentation on this one, and I apologize. He needed to leave at 6:30, and I didn't realize that he needed to leave at 6:30. So, but there is the availability of his presentation that's in the agenda with a lot of good information on what are some of the leading practices for municipalities to consider when advancing a municipal support resolution for battery storage projects within their jurisdiction before going to the IESO. I can also share some of the considerations that were shared by Energy Storage Canada with municipal staff. So I do have a presentation that goes into a little bit more detail on some of those leading practices and some resources that I can share with the community members who want to improve their understanding of what are the leading practices on municipal support resolutions for battery storage projects. So I did want to kind of draw people's attention to the slides from Andrew that are up there on the agenda, and that I will send out more additional information for the battery energy storage practices leading resources and presentation. And if we still need to up our game in terms of understanding to be able to respond to whatever is being proposed to General Issues Committee, that is something that we can kind of identify how we move that forward at the time. Does that sound okay? All right. right. So then on that note, I'm going to move us to agenda item 7.4. I want to introduce Leah
Sorry.
Codrington from Pembina Institute. She's kindly taken her time to share some of the leading early insights from a report they're developing on preparing for renewable energy proposals and advancing municipal support resolutions for renewable projects. So thank you very much, Leah, for joining us. Just to get an insight, this is just an early kind of insight. They're doing additional work on leading practices that they will be speaking to, I think, in the fall, but I'm sure Leah will provide us more information. And take it away, Leah.
Great, thank you so much. Well, first of all, can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Great. So my name's Leah Codrington. I'm an electricity analyst at the Pembina Institute. We're a clean energy think tank that advocates for effective policies that support Canada's clean energy transition. And I'm based in Ottawa, which is unceded Anishinaabe Algonquin territory. I'm really excited to be here today to talk about how municipalities can support local renewable energy in a way that maximizes benefits and aligns with community values. And I also want to say thank you for putting on such a great overview, Scott, of what's coming up. It means I can jump right into it. So next slide, please. Next slide, please. I'm not sure if I'm in control of this. Would it be easier if I share my screen?
Sorry,
Okay.
Here it is. We're just working on some of the tech, just trying to give some pokes to take it away.
All right. So the way that Ontario is building up its electricity generation right now is a new process, and it gives municipalities the opportunity to shape local development, which is great. But it also comes with a fair amount of responsibility. So municipalities across the province, not just Hamilton, are trying to figure out how to navigate this new process, and they're all doing it on their own. And from what I've seen in my work so far, no one has come up with a perfect solution. And it's becoming a bit of an urgent issue because the first window that Scott was talking about of this next procurement, which is called the long-term 2 or LT2 procurement, closes in October or December, depending on the type of resource being proposed. So these proposals are going to be coming in soon, and municipalities are having to process them, evaluate them, and figure out what to do. So the fact that Hamilton is considering different processes for municipal support resolutions right now really shows that the city is a leader in this space. And while best practices haven't really been established, I'm excited to share a few guiding steps I've learned from other municipalities who are working through the same processes. So these steps include laying a foundation by deciding where renewable energy projects can go, developing community criteria to evaluate proposed projects, and finally protecting the community by making sure that the project developer takes on any associated costs. So next slide, please. So one of the first things that a municipality should do is pick where renewable energy development is acceptable. Municipalities have control over where projects are sited under the Planning Act, with a few small exceptions in this LT2. Ground-mounted solar cannot receive a contract from the ISO if it's on prime agricultural land. That's just a rule for this procurement. And another rule is that there's no development of any kind permitted on specialized crop zones under this procurement. So developers proposing projects on prime agricultural land, so this would be something like wind or batteries, since solar is not allowed, they must provide the municipality with the first part of an agricultural impact assessment, or AIA. And this document is supposed to show that the developer has considered other sites and they have a plan to minimize the project's potential impacts on the agricultural land. The Ontario Ministry of Agriculture, Food and Agribusiness has published a checklist that municipalities can use to assess preliminary AIA results that they receive from developers. So I recommend that resource. I'm not going to spend too much more time talking about that here. And once municipalities have decided on acceptable land designations or zones, official plans and zoning bylaws should be updated to reflect those decisions. So this is something that Scott was talking about. It's really important to have these documents in place, so when you're evaluating a proposal, you can quickly tell whether the proposal aligns with local land use planning. Next slide, please. So here's sorry, it's quite small. I hope it's bigger where you are. But this flowchart, I'm hoping, will be helpful in explaining the LT2 process and where municipalities play a role. Setting up the foundation early in the project with official plans and zoning bylaws really impacts the municipality developer relationship later in the approval process. The way that the language in this document is structured can help ensure that municipalities have another chance to work with developers once they've granted the municipal support confirmation, the ISO has given that project a contract, the project comes back to the municipality and they can kind of do a more technical review. This step is shown in the last red box on the right. And someone was asking a question about this, like this isn't a requirement. This is something municipalities can choose to do if they want to have play more of a role in the project throughout its development. If you'd rather just provide the municipal support confirmation and leave it up to the province to provide final approvals, that's an option as well. But these are things that you can use your official plan and zoning bylaws to set out. And as you can see from the red boxes here, municipalities play a really key role in the beginning of the LT2 process as developers engage with communities and municipalities decide whether they want to provide a project with a municipal support confirmation. So that's why, because the deadlines are coming up in October or December, municipalities are kind of being squeezed in this tight timeline of having to make decisions fairly quickly. Next slide, please. So I wanted to give you an example of how the whole official plan and zoning bylaw documents play a role in the real world. This is a few excerpts from a draft of the Township of Romero's official plan. And so in the first part, they specify that no renewable energy facilities will be permitted as primary use on lands designated for agriculture. This was just their choice. They decided they didn't want any projects on agricultural land. But you can also use official plans to say, we want development to occur on these land designations. It doesn't need to be a negative. The next thing that they do is they specify that all renewable energy projects or proposals must proceed through an application for site planning approval, which happens after the project receives a contract from the ISO. So that was that red box all the way on the right. They want to be able to continue the municipality developer relationship throughout the development process. And then I also wanted to show this last part, which I think was a nice touch. They listed some expectations for developers as part of their official plan to help build positive community developer relationships. And I think that's a neat idea. In Ottawa, they took a different approach where they specified appropriate land designations for development, but they did not list renewable energy as an acceptable use in any zones in the city's zoning bylaw. So as a result, all projects that receive a contract from the ISO must apply for a zoning bylaw amendment, which extends the municipality developer relationship post-contract in a very similar way to what Romero did. Next slide, please. So the next step is about developing community criteria. It sounds like Hamilton has started working on this step. It's important to have a scorecard in mind when you're evaluating proposals. The scorecard should be based on community values and the benefits that people want to receive for these projects. There are a few kinds of benefits that could be considered when evaluating a project, including financial contributions through increased property taxes or developer payments, in-kind benefits like sponsored community events or environmental conservation efforts, and finally boosts to the local economy by prioritizing local labor and suppliers during the project development. So there's a lot of different options. This is just a small list. There are other things that you could consider as well. But having the scorecard in place allows you to look at the proposal and evaluate whether the benefits are aligned with what the community is looking for. Next slide, please. So community benefit agreements, which are sometimes also known as host agreements, are one way to formalize benefit sharing between developers and municipalities. Some municipalities who have the correct policies in place can require these agreements as a condition of their support. So that's very early in the process. While others have conversations post-contract awards, so further to the right on that process diagram I showed you. Municipal legal teams can provide you a bit more guidance than I can on what those policies should look like. Going back to Romero's official plan, they required renewable energy proponents to sign agreements to provide community benefit funds, as you can see highlighted here. And to give you a bit more of a numeric example, Haldimand County requires projects to provide an annual payment of $1,100 per megawatt of installed capacity over the project's lifetime, with an annual maximum of $300,000. So these types of payments can really add up, particularly if a municipality is hosting multiple projects. Next slide, please. So finally, now that we're talking about dollar values, the last step I want to talk about is how to protect the community from a financial perspective. Receiving, processing, and evaluating proposals is a burden on municipal staff. Like, who knows how long Scott's been working on this already. To offset this, municipalities can charge application fees to help cover a bit of staff time. So what the Township of Clearview does is they charge $250 for a pre-consultation checklist. And so this is just a list of requirements that they hand off to the developer so that the developer knows what they need to prepare for their application. Then they charge a $5,000 processing fee for each application, as well as a $2,500 deposit in case the municipality needs to review any of the documents that the developer has submitted. And in Remera, they charge $1,250 as a processing fee. So lots of different approaches here, but you want to strike a balance between covering the municipality's costs while not creating too high of a barrier for developers if you want to attract investment into the municipality. Developers should also be responsible for any upgrades to municipal assets that are required to host the projects. So this could be things like a road use agreement to cover the extra costs of having heavy machinery on municipal roads. It could also be training fees to ensure that the local fire department is prepared for any potential new scenarios that arise from batteries. These costs of upgrades aren't super important to consider right now in detail because you don't generally sign those agreements until after the project has a contract. But like the Township of Remera did in their official plan, I think it's a good idea to officially say that covering those costs is expected. Next slide, please. Finally, I wanted to highlight this process document published by Clearview Township because I think it's a really great example that ties together all of the steps I've been talking about. Their process protocol is a 4-page document, and it outlines municipal expectations for renewable energy developers. It lays out where development will be considered, what community engagement must look like, and it lists all the application steps and applicable fees. It's concise, it's clear, and it can help attract developer investment since they know exactly what the township expects from them. And I think it also reduces municipal burdens because developers come prepared. They know what's expected from them, and there's less back and forth between the municipality and the developer trying to figure out what they need to do. Next slide, please. So if any of this was interesting to you, you can find more examples online in Pembina's Power Playbook, Part 1. This is the first in a series of guides meant to support municipalities through the ISO's new procurement rules. I'm currently working on the next installment, which we hope to come out in the fall. Next slide, please. I think this is just my email address if you have any further questions that we can't get to today. Other than that, happy to hear your thoughts, comments, and questions.
Thank you so much, Leah. Just for folks who have any questions, just for folks online, if you can raise your hand, and then if there's any questions in the room. Nope, I don't think so. Trevor, take it away.
Yeah, through you, Chair. Trevor Rumoff, Senior Project Manager in the Office of Climate Change Initiatives. Thanks so much, Leah. I guess just 2 questions. One is, I think I heard some discrepancy just between the requirements through a municipal support resolution. And when I look at the LT2 documents, maybe if you can provide your expertise on, I see places where municipal support resolutions are required, like prime agricultural land, which makes sense why Remera put it in their official plans. But can you just clarify, in this LT2, are municipal support resolutions a requirement for any or all types, or are there specific land uses that do require an MSR?
Through the chair, that's a great question. MSRs are required anytime a project is being developed within municipal boundaries. It doesn't matter what kind of project it is or what the land designation is within the municipality, they're required. One potential discrepancy that you might be thinking of is with the LT1. They didn't require the MSR until after the project had been submitted for a contract. And that caused a few issues. Someone was talking about the battery storage project that's been happening in Ottawa. So to avoid having those kinds of consultation challenges, they've moved the MSR or the MSC to be at the beginning prior to the contract. MSRs are only not required if it's on Indigenous land, then you need support from the Indigenous nation, or if it's on I think, don't know the technical term, but unassociated land, or if it's on land that belongs to the Ministry of Natural Resources, then there's another process that you go through for that.
Great, thanks, Leah. Just wanted to get that clarification out there that, yeah, for any either battery or renewable energy storage proposals in Hamilton within the or within the jurisdictional boundary of Hamilton, a municipal support resolution is required. And there's just a quick follow-up question is, you mentioned in your process a bit of a time crunch. So roughly speaking, this LT2 RFP will launch approximately in August, I thought I heard, and then a closing in November. Does that sound about right? Or generally, what's the timeline for the RFP opening up and proponents having to get the MSR from municipalities to then submit that along with their full application to the IESO?
Yeah, through the chair, I've heard that the ISO is planning to formalize the RFP in the next month, and I've heard from a municipality that's expecting 2 proposals within this month as well. So it could be very soon. So that gives sort of the summer months to do community engagement potentially.
Yeah, go ahead.
I apologize. One more question, and this is for the benefit of this committee as well, because in the LT1 proposals that the city of Hamilton received, it was all battery energy storage systems. However, in this LT2, can you just confirm it's expected that municipalities could receive both energy storage, whether it be battery or others, but battery energy storage systems, and other types of renewable energy generation projects as well?
Through the chair, yes. This LT2 is what they call tech agnostic. So any kinds of energy resources are allowed. It has 2 streams, one for capacity and one for energy, which essentially means, can it produce electricity when we need it right now, which is capacity, or energy is, does it produce electricity in general whenever at a time? So batteries, for example, are in that capacity stream, and something like a wind turbine would be in the energy stream. One small comment, Ontario does not allow offshore wind, so you won't be seeing any of that. And because things like nuclear and hydroelectric take a really long time, you probably won't see any of those in this tight timeline procurement either. So really expecting it to be batteries, wind, solar, gas, or biogas.
Jeff, take it away.
I had a quick question. I haven't been following this closely. Are hybrid systems allowed? Like, could it be a wind farm or a solar farm with battery storage? Is that part of LT2?
Through the chair, that's an interesting question. I'm assuming it would be. I'm trying to think how they would do that through the different streams. There might be some technicalities in the RFP that make that less attractive to developers, but I'm gonna look into that and I can get back to you.
That's great. And the other one was, I guess, given the timelines, I would be assuming, I'm looking to staff on this, that whatever's in the official plan now is going to be what's in the official plan when these applications are reviewed. So it might be something to consider for the process. There's not going to be, renewable energy zoning or anything like that by then, presumably. So it would be more of like whatever other criteria the staff report comes up with. So yeah, just putting it out there, given the timelines, not for this procurement, I would imagine.
Through the chair, it's one of those things that it would be hard to do super quickly, but because there are rolling procurements, there are 4 windows to this LT2, and there are more long-term procurements happening after that. They've planned for 3 and 4. So if you don't get it done for this one, that's okay. It might make planners' lives a little bit more challenging when they're reviewing individual projects after contract, but it's going to help you still in those future procurements. So it's not a waste of time.
And then I see Frank's hand up. Take it away, Frank.
Yeah, I guess you mentioned that it's not just batteries that we're talking about, but thermal energy storage you didn't mention, and it hasn't been mentioned, or load shifting. The question, and I'll have to read your book, and send you an email or go to the ISO website. But is there a size criteria? Like, are they looking at, something that has to be 10 megawatts, or is it size constrained, these submissions?
Through the chair, there are, I believe, some size constraints in the capacity stream for gas. All of the projects need to be over a minimum size. I can't remember off the top of my head what it is, but we're not talking about like a small solar project on your roof. That's not eligible. We're talking about big utility scale installations. Does that answer your question? I think there were two questions in there.
Offline, we'll find out what the minimum is, right? Yeah.
Yeah, I can do that.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much, Leah. Thank you so much for sharing Pembina's research on this and for continuing to build up these playbooks. Building municipal capacity on streamlining the approvals and reviews of these processes is really, really important. Thank you so much. And then I did want to couple of other things just to kind of wrap up the presentations. I did want to highlight, we'll share some of the resources that we are aware of that are available to help with regards to municipal decision making on renewable energy projects and battery storage projects. We'll kind of share all of the Pembina resources that Lee was mentioning. We'll also keep you in the loop for when they have their playbook part 2. The AMO, Association of Municipalities of Ontario, has developed some resources as well to support municipalities, and Energy Storage Canada as well. So we'll package all that and send that up to all committee members via an email for the additional resources if you want to learn a little bit more about in terms of leading practices on local energy projects and processes in Ontario. Thanks so much, Leah. Then as another kind of follow-up to this, because planning is coming with the staff report on the July 29th, and we don't have a July committee meeting, there is a request for a motion for the Climate Change Advisory Committee. And if we can bring that up on the screen, Beatrice. To enable the Climate Change Advisory Committee to provide input on, out of curiosity, we're just doing on better energy storage projects because the report going into Council or General Issues Committee in July is just for battery energy storage projects and not for renewable projects.
Through the chair, Scott or Charlie may want to correct me on this, but my understanding, planning staff are taking a municipal support resolution protocol only dealing with battery energy storage systems.
Through the chair,
sorry.
Go.
Through the chair, that is correct.
Okay, so it is only going to be, we'd only be under the mandate of battery energy storage projects, but in order for the committee to provide input, there would need to be a vote on identifying or just proving a designate from the committee to be able to do a deputation at that planning committee meeting.
Just really quickly, Gabby, I just want to flag for the other committee members, this is like pretty much extremely similar to the motion we passed with regards to the Green Development Standards motion we passed that enabled Lucia to make her delegation to committee. So the wording is very similar. We've done similar things in the past, kind of just followed that model that we've already gone through with regards to agreeing we want someone to delegate at this future meeting, and we can maybe have a further discussion of that. But I just, as the mover, I just want to clarify, this is more or less kind of similar to what we did with Green Development Standards.
Thanks, Ian. Are there any questions or concerns that anybody has relating to any of the wording on this sample motion? No?
Well, I guess.
Right? Take it away.
Yeah, the only thing here is I don't think we should just limit it to battery storage. Like we talked about this, the presenter that couldn't make it he's listed a number of different energy storage, where it should really be energy storage. And then the focus could be on battery storage, but to exclude everything else doesn't make sense to me.
The only reason that it would focus on battery energy storage projects is only just because the staff report would focus on that. Then the question then comes saying is that the feedback then could come from the committee that this should not only be for battery energy storage projects, but it should be for all, the process should be similar for all local energy projects going in front of councils for a municipal support resolution.
Yeah, anything that the ISO identified as in their request for proposals, right? You have to line up with what's being proposed. That's we're an advisory committee. That's my
so
advice.
that input can get determined by the deputation that is being provided. Because we're not saying what the we're not saying what the committee will be saying. It's just that the staff report is going to focus on battery energy storage projects. And so the main part of the deputation will focus on what the input from the committee on what staff are proposing, but the deputation can raise other issues that this needs to be done for other projects as well.
That'd be fine.
Okay.
And just as the mover, I'll quickly say if Frank's fine with the wording as it is, that's great with me. He understands the intent, but if any members would be more comfortable to, make the wording a little bit more specific to that concern, I'm happy to accept that as a friendly amendment.
Okay. Juliana.
So my question would be to the mover, Ian, if you can clarify what specifically, either what the concerns and recommendations you would be making would be at this time, or what your process would be for doing that and getting input from other folks.
No, it's a good question, Juliana. No, very good question, Juliana. Maybe perhaps, we can change the wording of this to clarify which working group this would fall under the purview of. And that might get to the concern of who's actually going to be having the discussion about this. Again, my intention with regards to this was to try to follow the process we followed with the previous kind of recommended delegation process. But I'm more than happy to accept any friendly amendments, either with regards to a whereas, just to kind of clarify what those pieces might be, or we put it under the purview of a working group, and then that working group has a further discussion to it. I'm totally fine with either or with regards to that.
It's Gabby here. I did want to clarify, we have no idea what our input will be because we don't know what staff will be recommending to the to planning committee. So we have to wait for planning committee staff report, for the planning staff report to go into front of committee's agenda so that we can see what staff are proposing. And then there will need to be a meeting of those who are willing across the committee to provide input on the recommendations from the committee to planning committee as a result of the staff report.
Got it.
All of the
Okay,
determination
well,
on what the committee's input would be, we'll have to wait till we actually know what staff are recommending to planning committee. Scott,
I think
take it away.
If we just clarified that in the be it resolved, that would be helpful.
Sorry, Juliana, you wanted to add that into the motion?
Correct.
Okay, Ian, can you just add in that, saying that the process into the motion?
Yes, I'm happy to do that, and I'm assuming it'll be still on the screen for others to review as I do so.
Yeah. And then Scott, did you have any input that you wanted to provide? Take it away.
Yes, through the chair, just to clarify, and I apologize for the confusion, the report that staff are preparing will be concerning energy storage systems in general. So removing that battery would be okay. Yep.
Perfect. Thanks, Scott. I will add that change. Frank, is that your hand from earlier? Or is it another question?
No, it's from previous. and I
Okay,
think you've
perfect. Thank you.
captured You've captured my concern with making it broader.
Okay. Juliana, that's just from previous, your hand up, or is it from, or is there another question or a point to raise? Oh, no, got it. All right, thanks, Juliana. All right. Any additional kind of additions or edits to the motion that people want to speak to? And it's not, I don't think we should put it as a working group meeting. I think this really has to be the committee as a whole.
No, agreed, Gabby.
No, but
if anyone has any suggestions with regards
no,
to
but the
wording.
deputation doesn't need to be approved by the whole committee. The committee would be engaged in a process of developing the deputation, right?
I think we state a working group and allow the whole.
Okay, then we could just put in buildings working group there.
Hey, Gabby, I was just about to suggest, I think it makes sense just from a procedure standpoint to put this within the buildings working group. And
okay, yeah,
as
that's
we've already
fine.
established, all the working groups are open to all members should they be interested.
That works for me.
So I'm just curious, I'm not sure if we have to vote on this separately.
Well, let's just vote on it separately. So I have a mover. Thank you, Ian. I was just wondering if we have a seconder for this motion. No seconder?
You have some hands up on the screen, Gabby.
Where is
Shelley
that? Oh,
and Sue.
thank you, Shelley. Thank you. Okay, we got Shelley there. Okay. Sorry? So we got Shelley as the seconder. All right, so I'm going to ask all those in favor of approving the motion to show their hands on the screen. Okay. 1, 2, Zach, Sue, Mary Rose, Ashley. All right, perfect. If you guys can just all turn your hands down, please. No worries, thank you. And then anyone opposed to the motion? Seeing no hands, the motion is carried. All right. So now we're moving on to item 7.5, updates from the Office of Climate Change Initiatives.
Yeah, through the chair, I'll just quickly jump in. I know we're short on time, so I'll allow Catherine online or Beatrice to add if I've missed or if they wanted to add anything. So we have our annual report that's scheduled to the General Issues Committee coming forward on July 9th, and we encourage all individuals to provide their delegations. I continue to work on the proof of concept for our carbon budget calculators, and we're having staff currently test those proof of concept through the carbon budget and accounting framework. Beatrice is moving forward with community partners and developing the project agreements for the co-design of the climate justice framework, as well as she'll be providing an update to the LRT subcommittee on June 26th with some verbal updates regarding the recruitment process. Catherine continues to work on the corporate net zero policy to guide corporate new or major additions for corporate facilities, as well as working through the Better Homes, the later stages of the Better Homes Hamilton pilot project. We have the internal climate change reserve internal applications currently open to staff with a deadline of June 26th, and I believe we have 2 volunteers already for that to help Linda and the other directors score those. We're also in the process of hiring a temporary project manager position, with part of that major role will be to develop the Small Neighborhoods Grant Program that Linda's talked a lot about. If you have any questions about that, recommend to reach out to our team. And that's it. Catherine, Beatrice, feel free to add anything.
Any additions? Catherine, anyone to add anything? Beatrice? No? All right.
No, that sounds good. Thank you,
Perfect,
Trevor.
thank you. Is there any questions for Trevor? No? Okay. So we'll move on to 7.6. Ian, do we have any updates for resignations? I don't have any. So hoping you do if you have it on if we have it on the agenda.
No, not this month.
Okay, all right. And then we have 7.7. We're moving on to the Climate Change Advisory Committee Working Group updates. Ian, if I can just hand you the chair just so I can do the Buildings Working Group.
Take it away, Gabby.
All right, thank you. So did want to highlight, we have, if you go onto the agenda, there is a working group meeting notes. There's a couple of key questions that we wanted to do. There is a draft letter that is coming, that would be coming from the committee to the province on Bill 17. I just wanted to kind of find out if there's any questions that people have related to that. I did also want to kind of highlight, I also shared the Google Doc that for where that's available as well, if people want to put their information or any agenda items there, and I will throw that in the chat as well, just in case anyone needs it. Are there any comments or questions related to the notes or to the draft letter that would be going from the committee to the ERO process as part of Bill 17? No? Okay. So then the other question is whether the committee would like to approve a deputation to the July 9th Hamilton Planning Committee. Just speaking to the letter that went from the committee to the ERO process for Bill 17 and request for the City of Hamilton to also provide input to that Bill 17 respect the authority of municipalities to advance mandatory green development standards. We did kind of say that the other option is to do a citizen committee report, but it seems since it's already on committee and we have the ability to do deputations, deputation seems like the easier process. Catherine, I see your hand. Take it away.
Was it July 9th or was it July 8th?
The
planning
I have
committee.
it. Okay, so it's July 8th then. Sorry. Why did I did that
we just need to confirm that.
Yeah, I made that mistake before as well, I think. So we'll make it for the it's for July 8th.
I mean, maybe, we should just double check it, but I think it's July 8th.
Okay, that's fine.
It is July 8th.
Yeah, all right, so. Now, I think we need to vote on doing the letter and vote on the approval of a deputation, correct? I would think so, since. Okay, so maybe we'll just go on and see if there's any issues that come up from it. All right, so then if we have a motion, do I have to do a motion for a first one do I have to do like a mover and a seconder for getting this, or just we go straight into a vote?
Just do the mover and seconder. Yeah.
Okay, so the mover, I'll be the mover.
Yeah.
Gabby is the mover. Okay. Is there a possibility of someone as a seconder?
I'm seeing a hand up from Shelley.
Oh, Sue, thank you. I see Sue's hand just went up. I got a Sue as a seconder. All right. All those who approve the vote to send that letter to the ERO process. Okay. Thank you. And then if folks can just throw their hands down. Is anyone opposed to the committee sending that letter to the ERO process for Bill 17? Seeing no one opposed to it, that motion or that vote is carried. Now the question then becomes the possible committee deputation at the July 9th Planning Committee meeting, where this will be on the agenda. We need July 8th. Will Ian, that would be your mover. I'm going to put Ian as mover. I'm happy to be the seconder. And now, if we can have a hands up for all those committee members who approve having a committee delegation to the July 8th Planning Committee meeting to speak to Bill 17 and the input that the committee provided. All right. And Juliana. All right, and if folks can just turn their hand down, please. Frank? Or is there anyone opposed to having a committee representative do a delegation to the July 8th Planning Committee meeting? Seeing no opposition, that vote is carried as well. And I think that is that unless there's any questions on the Buildings Working Group update, we can move on to the next working group, Community Engagement and Climate Justice Working Group, if there's any updates.
Hello. Just a quick update. On June 6th, Beatrice, Trevor, Victoria Brzezowski of Hamilton Health Sciences, and Sweelin and Dari and Dr. Sean Kidd and I met. They're from the Center for Addiction and Mental Health. And there's just as a way to continue to grow our network of people who are interested in working on climate-related mental health issues and resources for frontline staff. And there'll be more information to come. Dr. Kidd actually made an ask. They'll be gathering municipalities for kind of a think tank. And it's, I don't know, he called it some kind of fall drill down on key policy areas. And that has to do around maximum temperatures and cooling center access and other things. And that's through with their national network on health equity, climate, and poverty. So if I understood correctly from that, the ask will go out to the Office of Climate Change Initiatives and through the city. So that's where we're at with that, just continuing to kind of have conversations with people and bring them in.
Thanks, Sue. Any questions for Sue? Thank you. And next we have Nature-Based Solutions Working Group. Any updates?
Yes, we were able to meet yesterday afternoon. So the minutes were sent to Beatrice, but not in time, I'm assuming, to get in to this agenda. And if we could share those, Beatrice, with folks after this, that'd be great. But I can go over some of the highlights.
We can do that. Okay.
Yeah, we'll share.
Thank you.
We'll be sure to share that with the committee members, Juliana.
Great. Okay, so three things we discussed and two recommendations for folks tonight to consider at the broader committee. So one was the discussion around an opportunity that we see for potentially staff to be consolidating any upcoming reporting. on actions that are related to council-approved plans. For example, the Biodiversity Action Plan, the Watershed Action Plan, the Urban Forest Strategy. What's currently happening is we're getting sort of independent reports on all those things, even though they are quite interconnected. And so our recommendation, what we discussed, was asking staff if it's possible for a unified report to council on all of those actions related to nature-based solutions, so that it is streamlined, and so that that information on all those interconnected things is coming to council at the same time, so that it can all sort of be evaluated and understood together, and also just as a way to improve the tracking of all those various commitments, actions, targets, and some of them kind of circulatory, where one plan refers to the other. So that would be one recommendation that we would like to see. And I don't have that in a motion, but we can work on that and potentially maybe make the motion now that be something we recommend to council. And then the second thing that we discussed was a further asking for a little bit more information, and if it's through OCCI staff, that would be great if they could report back on currently how city policy considers natural heritage system in decisions around the disposal of any surplus lands. So when and then the idea being that the recommendation to staff would be that when we do have surplus lands and they're potentially of natural heritage, like not part of the natural heritage system, whether that's core area, for example, that those the decision to dispose of those surplus lands would go to given the opportunity to a conservation authority, for example, or an appropriate land trust to make that purchase rather than it potentially being lost. So question being to OCCI, if we can find out what the current process is and if there's a mechanism or what the mechanism would be for surplus lands that are in the core area. And then the final agenda item we discussed was bringing together and sort of the nature-based solution team, kind of facilitating a collaborative meeting of community groups or organizations, schools, et cetera, whomever in Hamilton that is currently involved in tree planting on public land or private land, and coming up with some opportunities to collaborate with the city and each other on that. So that was something we didn't quite get to discussing, but that's something that's in the works as well. And I'll be reaching out to some folks to see how we can make that happen.
Thanks, Juliana.
Yeah.
Through the chair, Juliana, it's Trevor Imhoff here, Senior Project Manager, Office of Climate Change Initiatives. Thanks for that update. I think the only way, like the only avenue in terms of process here would be to write a citizen committee report. I will say I don't fully understand all of the recommendations that you verbally said, but happy to follow up. What I do hear and understand, those have implications for many divisions and departments across the city that work on urban forest strategy, biodiversity action plan, probably even some of our tree planting objectives that we put in our Hamilton Climate Action Strategy. So I think the implications are far reaching. And I think our clerk staff, I'm hearing their recommendations in my head is that it would be through a citizen committee report would be the best avenue. And perhaps if the CCAC wants to put a recommendation on the floor today, which I'm kind of advising that maybe we can go back and look at the meeting minutes and develop what the motion is to direct OCCI to work with Nature-Based Solutions Working Group to develop the Citizen Committee report. And perhaps that's a motion we could put forward at a subsequent CCAC meeting.
Okay. All right, so then that's a follow-up item. Then just as an action item, just some conversations between the nature-based working group and some staff to just figure out the process and report back to the committee members just via email, just in terms of what the upcoming process will be. Is that okay?
Through the chair, if Juliana's okay, that sounds good to us.
Yeah, that sounds good. My understanding was, for just information, we didn't need the Citizens Committee report, but I guess for the first recommendation that would be required. Is that what you're saying, Trevor?
Yeah, and please clarify your first recommendation through the chair. But what I heard you say is the recommendation is to consolidate reporting as it relates to urban forest strategy, biodiversity action plan, to some sort of consolidation related to the nature-based actions within those corresponding plans and strategies?
Yes, correct.
Yeah. And through the chair, and again, I think that has far-reaching implications for staff in forestry and horticulture, OCCI. So again, I could be incorrect on this, but just hearing in terms of how the CCAC can advise on staff work, it would be through a citizen committee report submitted to General Issues Committee, which then it would be up to General Issues Committee to determine whether or not they would agree with those recommendations, and then that would direct staff work accordingly.
Okay, thank you very much for that. So is it possible then, so that we're not delayed by not having a meeting in July and August, if we would work on that citizen committee report with staff or whomever, the working group's input, and then have something kind of ready to approve for a future GRC
For the September meeting would be good.
Mm-hmm.
If that works okay for timing, Juliana and Trevor. Because we don't have any meetings in July and August.
Mm-hmm.
And we can't do it online. We can't vote online.
Got it. Okay, thank you very much.
All right. I just saw that Lucia had to leave for the technical and governance working group update. So we'll put that just for the future next meeting. The transportation working group, is there any updates from the transportation working group?
Not this month.
All right. Perfect. Then we are on to I just need a mover and a seconder to receive all the items, the information items from agenda item 7. Mover? Sue, moved. Seconder? Juliana is the seconder. All approved, or yeah, all those who approve receiving the information from agenda item 7. Okay. All right, Frank. All right. Okay, and if folks can throw their hands down, is there anyone opposed to approving a receipt of all that information? All right, good. All right, no one opposed to it. So then being no other further business, the Climate Change Advisory Committee is adjourned at 8:04. Sorry, 4 minutes late, folks. Sorry about that. So 8:04 p.m. Thank you so much, everybody, for your time on what is a beautiful evening. There still will be emails, do not be shy about sending emails across to the committee over the summer time period. It's meant to be communicating across the committee over the summer, but we won't be having any meetings in July and August, and our next meeting will be in September. I do hope everybody has a great summer. I hope you get some good vacation time and some time exploring and relaxing. So thank you everybody much for your hard work all throughout 2025 so far on the committee, and I hope everybody has a fabulous summer. And the meeting's adjourned. Thank you.
Agreed. Bye, everyone. Have a great summer.
Bye.